I haven't sat down to film a video like this in like 2 weeks, maybe longer. So I'm feeling a little shy. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you are new. I'm wearing colors. The sun is shining, which I don't know if I'm guessing you guys can tell. And my sunglasses match my cardigan. I'm just like really enjoying the like 4 or 5 straight days of sun that we've had in London this week. It feels so rejuvenating. Like I feel like that cold or whatever that everyone has going on, like brewing inside of me, but I don't even care because the sun is out. With all of this kind of positivity and excitement around like spring rolling around and all of that, with all the positivity and the light and the brightness, I thought that I would talk to you guys about the 10 books that changed my life. And by that, I don't really mean like changed who I am fundamentally as a person. I mean changed my relationship with reading and made me fall more in love with reading. And I'll try to explain to the best of my abilities, because some of these are just like so near and dear to my heart for no other reason than it's just a really great work of fiction. None of these books are nonfiction. That's not the kind of life-changing I'm talking about. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. The first book is one that I read the summer before I moved here, and I think about it all of the time. I think if you're looking for like a really uncomfortable, jarring, gripping story, this is the one for you. And that is The Virgin Suicides by Jeffrey Eugenides. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but Jeffrey Eugenides. This book, I remember reading it and just feeling so sad and conflicted, and the narrators are just so unreliable and disgusting, and you're reading about these sisters who are all inevitably going to die by the end, and you're hearing this story from the point of view of the boys that live across the street, and it is just so deeply like uncomfortable. And watching how these boys interpret the experience of these 5 sisters and everything that they've been through was just so poignant to me. I think about this book all the time. It's one that I will probably almost definitely reread. I love this story. I love this book. It's genuinely like a work of art. To kind of stay on a depressing track, I guess, Sally Rooney's Normal People. I've talked about this book a few times on this channel. A lot of people don't like Sally Rooney's writing. A lot of people have their own issues with her, and that's fair enough. I think she's a really great novelist. I think her stories are so human, and obviously this book has been turned into a show and has been just a huge part of pulp culture since it came out, but I do think it's just a really great read. I think that the TV adaptation was so well done for this book, but I do think it's worth the read, and it's such an easy read compared to her other novels. I literally got through it in a day when I first started reading back in like 2022. I think that she captures kind of adolescence and emotional immaturity so well. No notes for this one as well. Kind of looping back to sisters, this one is one that is tragic but differently and beautiful. I think it is a really beautifully written story. I think as a second novel goes crazy, and that is Blue Sisters by Coco Melors. I read Cleopatra and Frankenstein. I didn't love it as much as a lot of people did, but I enjoyed it enough that I finished it. I got the signed edition from Daunt Books for Blue Sisters because I love a story about sisterhood. This one deals with loss and then just the complexities of familial relationships. I don't really have much more to say about it. If you want to read something that explores the complexities of sisterhood, I really recommend this book. It was just so moving for me. I think it makes you kind of reevaluate your own life and your own relationship to your family, and yeah, I just think it's a beautiful book. I really enjoyed it. The next book is one that I don't have in print, but I'm desperate to get my hands on, but I read it on my Kobo, and that's Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. I loved this book. A lot of the books that I read are quite sad, if you haven't noticed, but it's a story about a man who has a really complicated relationship to his parents. His mom died when he was really young. His dad died within the last, I think it was 10 years, and basically raised him all by himself in America after coming from Iran, I believe. It just kind of follows the story of a man trying to find his place in the world, basically being an adult orphan and having substance abuse issues with his sexuality, issues with his, like, with what he wants to make of his life. It was genuinely like such a beautiful book. I keep saying that about all of these books, but genuinely, like, when I got to the end, like, my heart broke in ways that I don't think I've ever felt before, and I can't recommend it enough. I really loved this book. If you're gonna read one book from this video, I really recommend Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. Okay, let's move on to a couple classics. No more happy than the last. The Bell Jar. She was crazy. I think The Bell Jar really encompasses what it feels like to be depressed. I think it really illustrated feelings that I could never put into words. I think alongside just being a woman and having really weird emotions, really uncomfortable emotions, Sylvia Plath really put that into words really, really well. This book is not for the weak. If you have a history of depression, make sure you read this when you are not depressed, because it is quite dark. I think the analogy of the bell jar and the fig tree was just, like, obviously iconic. I don't know, it put into words really complex feelings. Yeah, it just really, I think if you are someone who knows somebody who's depressed, or you are somebody who's depressed in a good mental state, it's a book that can be really transformative, because it kind of, again, like, it shows you how difficult it can be to be depressed and struggle so poorly with your mental health. So from an outside perspective, like, it gives you kind of a different narrative around it and kind of helps you understand it a bit more. And then from somebody who has struggled with their mental health, it just makes you feel less alone, in my opinion. It makes you feel like, oh, these feelings are kind of normal. And so for me, I thought it was really transformative in that way. Another classic, The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. This is a classic. Everybody's read this. If you haven't read it, you should read it. The reason that I thought that this was transformative and changed my life is because it made me less afraid to read classics. I don't think the story was all that changing. I think the story was good. I liked it. I enjoyed it. But it definitely took away a lot of the anxiety and this fear of reading really old stories. I thought it was really interesting to kind of read about a world that I've never known, but also just in general prove to myself that I could read English that isn't modern. I think everybody should read this one, because it's such an easy read, and it just takes away the fear of classic literature, because it feels really modern and it feels like you can relate to an old story. We all can, and that's why it changed my life. If you know me in real life, you've heard me talk about this book. You've seen me make it my whole personality. That's The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This book was crazy. I read it when I first moved to England in 2022. I was all by myself. I had no friends, and I was completely enthralled with the story. I thought about it all the time. I still think about it all the time. As with the rest of these books, think about them all the time. It is a big book. This is not the print that I read. I read the just standard market one, but unfortunately I lent it to a friend and never got it back. But look how thick this is. Like, this is a big book, and it can feel a bit daunting, but I promise you it is such a quick read, because the story is so fast paced and is so interesting. You just want to know more about every single character's flaws, and you just want to get to the bottom of the story. When you get to the end of it, you feel really sad that it's over, really glad that you read it, and will think about it forever, and you will wonder why it was never made into a film, but you will be grateful that it was never made into a film, if that makes sense. Read it and you'll understand. My next book I read around the same time as The Secret History. I think it was my next read after it. That's Bunny by Mona Awad. I love Mona Awad. I think she's a brilliant thriller. I don't know if it's like thriller necessarily, but her books are definitely like spooky. I would say they're thrillers. I loved this book. It's set in a university, and it follows an MFA student who kind of joins a cult by accident, which is a very similar plot to The Secret History, with very different outcomes and very different tones. I don't know how to explain it better than that. But this book is spooky. It deals with cults. It deals with cliques, girlhood. I thought it was a really great read, and I cannot wait until We Love You Bunny comes out. I have it pre-ordered on my Kobo, and I have a signed edition pre-ordered because I'm so excited. It's a pretty quick read. It's pretty thin. I've lent this one out to a couple of friends. Yeah, I loved this. I think about it all the time. And honestly, like, this book got me onto the Mona Awad hype. I read Rouge I read Rouge about a year ago. I cannot wait to get into more of her books. Like, I have 13 Ways to Kill a Fat Girl on my bookshelf on my TBR, and I am so excited about it. I need to get to it so quickly, and it is so thin that I think I can read it pretty quickly. Mona Awad is also a Canadian author, so we love to see it. Next is an anthology, and that's Someone Will Love You in All Your Damaged Glory by Raphael Bob Waksberg, who is the creator of BoJack Horseman. And if you know me, you know I love BoJack. This has quite a few different short stories in it, and they all are written in a very absurd way, very similar tone to BoJack. Like, there's a lot of mixing of animals and humans. What's the word I'm looking for? The animals being human. I don't know what word it is that I'm looking for, but there's quite a few of these that I have bookmarked and do go back to quite often. One that really stuck with me is Rufus, and it's a story written from the point of view of a dog, and I've made so many people read it. Like, I'll have people come over and I'm like, read this, read it now. I just love it. I need to read this again. I loved it, and it was such a quick read. I've said this in a video before, but I feel like anthologies are so much quicker to read because the stories are so much shorter and faster paced, and you just kind of quickly go through it, if that makes sense. I don't know. And finally, the last book is the Fleabag scriptures. Didn't have any other screenplays in this, but I thought, why not have one? I read these before I started my master's course, and not only was it really informative to just see how the stories were written for TV, but it was also really interesting to kind of read. I hadn't seen the series. I want to point out I hadn't seen the series while I read this or before I'd read this, but it was interesting to kind of have my own interpretation of the story before watching it. And I think if you ever have the opportunity, you should definitely do that because it is kind of fun to just see what the story entails in your head before you watch it on TV. And like, I don't know, I really like that, but maybe you won't. And I'm just really grateful that I had the experience of creating these characters for myself in my head, if that makes sense. Like, having them be a little bit more relatable to me, even though I knew like what Phoebe Waller-Bridge looked like and all of that, just like being able to kind of visualize it in a way that was entirely my own was really fun. Those were my 10 books that changed my life that I recommend reading. Transformative, beautiful, perfect, amazing, chef's kiss, all of the above. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it was a little bit brain dumpy and not as structured as they usually are, but hopefully you still enjoyed them. Let me know if you'll be reading any of the books that I mentioned. If you've already read some of them, let me know what you thought. I will see you guys in my next one. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure you like and subscribe. And yeah, I'll see you guys next week. Bye.